Welcome back to another episode of Casa de Confidence and the Confident You Radio Network. Today, I am excited to have this conversation because, as you can hear from my voice, there's something going on. And I'm always looking for answers, always looking to learn more and to really bring the right tools to my life and to yours. Today, with me, I have Dr. Jenny Tufankian, who is a licensed naturopathic physician for 2 decades. I have to mess something up every once in a while, everybody, and that's part of my charm. Thank you for being here, Dr. Jenny. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be talking with you today.
Yeah, I have so many questions that are going through my brain. But first of all, tell us a little bit more about your story because I have a friend who became a physician after
Mm,
her own journey.
mhm.
First started as a nurse and knew that she wanted to do more and pursued becoming a physician and then went after a fellowship. And I've seen her story. Did you always want her to be a doctor, and what led you here?
When I look back, I really did always want to be a doctor, but there was a huge space of time when I forgot that. And I
Mm,
remembered it when I was at this very critical point in my life. I found myself in an unexpected situation of pregnant, of single, of having about $200 in my pocket, in my bank account,
mm.
and with a busted knee. I
Wow.
had studied political sociology because I wanted to solve all of the world's problems. I saw there was suffering and I wanted to help.
Mhm.
I was trying to understand how the society worked so that I could help. And I was thinking about becoming a lawyer or going into education. And when I found myself in this situation, I really had this huge internal exploration of deciding to become a single mom and then really thinking about I've now committed to this life for at least 18 years. Of course, it's much
Mhm.
longer than that. And I started to really think about some other things. And I went to a personal growth conference, and there was, I didn't like the person that was teaching the conference. I didn't want to take it. But the guy had this amazing story that really struck with me. There was a woman who was a cashier at a grocery store. She always wanted to be an airline pilot, and now she's flying for Alaska Air.
Wow.
And I got into my mom's car with my big belly, and I thought, I always wanted to be a physician, but I didn't think I was smart enough because I got a C on a
Mm.
biology test in high school. And I didn't even study for the biology class. I didn't even crack open the book, but I thought I was an idiot because I got that
Mm.
C. And I made decisions about I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. I can't do this. That's not for me. And when I look back, I mean, I read the First Woman Doctor book over and over again as a kid. I was always interested in healing plants and nutrition. I was a geek in 6th grade. Everybody else was eating Cheetos and bologna sandwiches. I was making my own whole wheat bread and bringing raw vegetables and whole wheat bread to my school lunches. I was giving out vitamin C in 6th grade because it was good for your immune system. I mean, it was a total freak. And so when it all came together, it really made sense. And I chose naturopathic medicine because of my love of herbs and plants and how much they can work with the body to help you heal.
Mhm.
As a naturopathic doctor, I'm primary care. I can use pharmaceuticals if I want to, but I also really get to attune to all the different levels of the body, the physical body, the mental, emotional body, the energetic body. So it really meets all of who I am, and I get to meet those who I'm working with on all of their levels.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I love the C in biology. I'm going to come clean and say I failed biology.
Well, I should
And
come cleaner and say I failed algebra too, so I
yeah,
really
well,
get that.
listen, and this is the story, right? That we have a failure early in our life.
Yeah,
And a
right.
lot of times we allow that failure not to teach us, but we make it mean that we are lacking, that we are unable to, and that we're never going to, right? Fill in the blank.
Right.
And I love the fact that you rewrote that story for yourself
Yeah.
and that you learn that hey, I can do this. If somebody else went ahead and became a pilot, I can become a doctor. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that as the auntie to many girls, And I talk about my niece Amelia, but in the last couple of weeks, I actually got to spend time with my other nieces
Mhm.
that I had not really spent some time with in El Salvador. And one of them is about to begin sixth grade. And I,
Mhm.
I asked her, "What's your favorite subject?" And
Mhm.
she said, "Science."
Mm.
And I don't often hear that from young girls. And
Mhm.
I wanted to immediately be able to nurture that, to make sure that she doesn't lose that love for math and science,
Yes.
because we lose it. So this
Mhm.
gives me that north star to continue to create the content, so that the women that are listening to this can also help to create that tomorrow for the women, for the girls that are coming after them.
Yeah.
So again, thank you again for being here. But one of the things that I want to talk about is
Mhm.
chronic fatigue,
Mhm.
and a little bit of the things that you help individuals, well, a lot of the things that you help individuals with. How did you land working with women? Because I know that a lot of times, if we are not our best advocates, we are misdiagnosed. For many years in my life, I was misdiagnosed. And finally, I got answers in 2008 that I had an autoimmune. And then
Mhm.
it put me in a path to understanding how to be able to work through having an autoimmune. But a lot of women don't find that. Tell me a little bit more about how you got here.
Yeah, so I got here also through my own personal journey.
Mhm.
I was second year in medical school and decided to have another child. I was married and wanted to have another kid and ended up having a series of miscarriages, and one of them was at 17 weeks.
Wow.
That 17-week miscarriage, I hemorrhaged, had to be rushed to the hospital, and would have died if I hadn't had modern medical care for sure.
Mm.
And that experience, along with I lost 5 other people that year, and I was in medical school with a 5-year-old. I mean, it was just
Mhm.
full on. There wasn't space, excuse me, there wasn't space for me to, as you talk about, there wasn't space for me to take care of myself on another level, right?
Mhm.
I had friends in school who were going off to meditate, and I would say, "What's that?
What's that?
What's
Yeah.
meditation?" My social time was standing in line to go to the bathroom because I was in
Mhm.
medical school with a child and I was just doing, doing, doing. I loved it. I was very happy, but
Mhm.
my life was so full. And so when these other things started to happen, the deaths, the griefs, and then when I had the miscarriage, it really threw me into what I call a dark night of the soul. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone, yet it was one of the richest experiences of my life because I had to learn for the first time, and I think a lot of you women listening to this can understand. This is the first time in my life I had to let the world turn without me. I was the
Mm.
person that was always everybody else's rock. People always came to me for support. They
Yeah.
came to me for food. They came to me for counsel. I was just that person. They came to me for money, like whatever it was. Like I was
Mhm.
the rock. And so for me to break down to a point where I could not even stand the energy of somebody else in the room with me, I couldn't parent, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was filled with anxiety, fear. I was suicidal. All of that was happening to
Mm.
me. And I just was in bed for months staring at the ceiling with IVs in my arm. So this was really the point when I became very, very sick. And
Mhm.
the dark night of the soul piece became a energetic and spiritual awakening for me, which I was amazing. And it also made me a much better physician because I understood what it was like to actually be that sick where you couldn't count on yourself to walk to the
Mhm.
bathroom. And I'm grateful for that, for my life. And I was able to get out of that with getting some real help with subconscious work. And that helped me understand the power of the subconscious mind when
Mhm.
people are really, really sick and struggling with anxiety, with fear, with depression, with illness. There's usually a subconscious pattern that when we can really address that, we can really tap into the energy in our body and we can start to heal. That helped me get from the bed to the couch, but I
Mhm.
had to take a whole year off of medical school to heal what was labeled as chronic fatigue syndrome. I didn't want that label. I hated the
Mhm.
label. It was called the yuppie flu in the 90s. I didn't want it on me, but it was it. And
Yeah.
that's really what happened to me. And it was through my own personal experience of having this condition, coming out of it, and being able to, once I got through my residency, I was able to figure out the root causes for me, and I was able to really come back 150%. A lot of
Mhm.
people who struggle with chronic fatigue, they get stuck in what I call this the land of beige, or where they have this invisible ceiling above them where they don't feel
Mhm.
like they can push above it or else they'll crash. And my experience was I was able to get 100% out of that and
Mhm.
had another kid and worked and had an amazing, amazing full life. And that's what I want for everybody who's struggling with these conditions is to be able to get back to that full energy state.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your journey because I think that sometimes we look at someone from the outside and then we think, oh, they don't get it. They've never been
Yeah,
in my shoes.
right.
But we really, I want to normalize that all of us have been through something that has led us to where we are. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I find very interesting is, and we can unpack a little bit of this, from my own experience, but one of the things that I heard you say is that there's a lot of unconscious things
Mhm,
going on
mhm,
that we don't address.
mhm,
I often call and talk about how we are living in this white noise. We're kind of going about life and things are happening, but we're
mhm,
not really paying attention.
mhm.
I know I think I saw on your website that a lot of women will say I'm fine, but they really are not.
Right.
What are some of these subconscious things that could be going on for somebody that maybe we need to start to bring to the surface, work through, and maybe start to get some answers and
Mhm,
shift from where
mhm,
we are?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's such a good question. The subconscious mind is so much of who and what we are that operates both our physical
Mhm.
body and our emotions. So there's so much that we just think of, oh, this is who I am. I'm Jenny and I'm always this way. Whereas
Mhm.
that's actually subconscious patterning. The conscious, we're only, if you think of a pie, only 5% is conscious thought. Like it's skinniest,
Mhm.
skinniest, skinniest little pie.
Yeah,
You're just going to have a taste. That's
that's
conscious
that's
thought.
very small.
That's
5% is
very
very
5% is
tiny.
tiny, tiny, tiny. It's a few bites. And the rest is subconscious. Now, some of that subconscious is controlling your heartbeat and your respiration and things like that. But it's all the visual experiences, the auditory experiences, the emotional experiences you've had since you were in utero are
Mm,
in your subconscious mind. And we also inherit patterns that are in our subconscious mind. So there can be anxieties, there can be passions, there can be all kinds of things that we inherit, literally inherit, and that are part of that subconscious piece. Now, my experience has been with myself and as I work with other people that there's a lot of automatic programming going on. There's
mhm.
cultural overlay to all of this of I'm not good enough, right? That
Yeah.
I can't, that sort of that glass ceiling I was talking about,
Mhm.
some of that glass ceiling when people have long COVID or chronic fatigue is literally just they don't have the energy in their cells to produce. Some of that glass ceiling also can be in the subconscious mind where their body is fearing doing more things and it's sending signals out of fear. You
Mm,
mentioned, you and I talked in the green room a little bit about how when we get sick and things like that, it can trigger different things and it can really trigger this fear response in us. And
mhm.
that fear response can get very strong and powerful through the limbic brain and start to create a vicious cycle between the mitochondria in your cells, which are the energy
Mhm.
powerhouses, and your brain. And when you're in that fear state, your body actually starts to down regulate your energy source,
Wow.
and then that can really cause a lot of problems for people.
Mhm.
So I think that the thing, if you're just to say, if I was just to say, how can somebody tell if they've got subconscious stuff going on? If you wake up and you are full of joy every day and you just know that you are worthy of love and it is so easy for you to receive, to laugh, to love, to just be present in the moment, you're doing
Mhm.
great and you need to keep doing what you're doing. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh gosh, you've got this tape of like, I got to
Mhm.
do this, I got to do that, I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. Like, or it may just be
Yeah.
that driving force in your behind your, in your
Mhm.
spine going, I got to go, 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 push,
Mhm.
push, push. I got to make this. It could even be an excitement about it, but it's sort of this real push.
Mhm.
Then that is likely means that you're running some subconscious programs of I got to do better. I got to
Yeah.
be better than, I got to prove myself, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Those are
Absolutely.
signs. Those are
Those
signs.
are really, really good. I have to tell you, I I read something this week, and I wish I would have seen that maybe 15 years ago. You can get burnt out doing things you love.
Yes.
And I remember when I was climbing the corporate ladder, and right before I got diagnosed with my autoimmune, and I have Sjogren's for people who don't know. Um, it, I was traveling a lot. I was
Mhm.
doing climbing, trying to
Mhm.
be better. And like you said, I was the person that would wake up and be like, oh my God, I have to get this done. I have to do this and I have to show up. And it was such a driven thing. And
Yeah.
it does come from a lot of patterns that have been instilled in me from very young.
Yeah.
And I've been in my own journey and healing physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I noticed this week, I was traveling to El Salvador, which is where I'm from.
Mhm.
I was born there. My mom is from El Salvador, and we
Mhm.
left the country when I was 10
Mhm.
because my dad was not from El Salvador, and our being that the country was at war,
Mhm.
and American citizens were not looked upon very well. We had to leave.
Yeah.
Um, but for all intents and purposes, like I spent some time in a war torn country. I
Mhm.
also spent my life in a very loving home with my grandparents, but they really instilled in me that I needed to be better. I needed to succeed. I needed to so many things. And
Mhm.
being in El Salvador, I was there for some family business,
Mhm.
not necessarily a vacation. I was trying to make a vacation out of it, but I had a flare up. I had a
Mhm.
flare up because there was a lot of stress going on. And I remember, number one, I was driving around. And by the way, if you haven't, you heard me talk about this lately, I've been getting very nervous driving,
Oh.
and it's something that I'm working through. So now I'm driving, and I'm getting nervous as I'm driving, and also I'm passing different places in the country where all these memories are being triggered, and
Mhm.
some of them are really good, but I
Mhm.
I, I had to become
Mhm.
that conscious observer of
Yeah.
what was going on within me.
Yeah.
Um, and when I one of the days I felt incredibly worn out, torn down,
Mhm.
and just
Mhm.
physically sick, I had
Mhm.
to just say, stop, let's
Mhm.
take it easy, and
Mhm.
let's see what is going on and really process a lot of that
Mhm.
um, in order to kind of move forward. Now, most people can say, Julie, you have a cold or you grab some sort of bug from the airplane, which could be, but
Mhm.
also I know that a
Mhm.
lot of the mental stuff that was going on was impacting me. Would you
Mhm.
say that it's not just in my head? I'd love to hear whether it's in my head or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really see that I love what you just said and how you're talking about this, because what I see is that you're seeing this as a gift, which is how I do as well. Or the what I see for you is that this is a potential gift.
Yeah.
And that the fact that even though you have this autoimmune disease is allowed you when you went home, and yeah, you had a crash and you got triggered, but what did it actually do? It's actually allowing you time to slow down, to
Hmm.
process some of the trauma that was there from earlier in your childhood. And because you've done this personal growth that you have this wisdom and experience to be able to go, oh, I know what's going on. I can just do that few degrees of separation and
Hmm.
become the observer of what's happening, and come with compassion towards myself, and allow myself to just give my body time to, it's really giving your emotional body. When I talk about there's that
Yeah.
physical, mental, emotional, and energetic body, I think you're allowing that energetic body that kind of goes in shock when you're like such different cultures and
Yeah.
times, right? Your
Yeah.
reality then is so different from your
Yeah.
reality now. Like your energy is like, whoa, what's this? You're
Right.
picking up the energy of where you're at there compared to where you're not. It's very different. So that energy body, and then the mental, emotional body of that little girl who was there, and then your adult self with whatever family stuff was being triggered,
Hmm.
like all of those needed some time to process. And so
Yeah.
your physical body slowed down to
Hmm.
have you go lie down so that you could actually digest what was
Hmm.
happening around you, and you had the wisdom to listen, and you had the wisdom to know how to process, which your earlier corporate self didn't, right?
No, not at all.
Your earlier
Not
corporate
at
self,
all.
and like, more coffee.
The funny thing is that, yes, I look back at that woman, that a young woman that was, okay, I'm sick, but I can't, what is that going to mean? Like, I'm not going to get the
Yeah,
promotion. I'm going to
right,
be looked at
right,
as, not good enough, and
right.
really pushed myself. And I
Yeah.
did a couple different things this week that I never would have said I was a people pleaser. But when it comes to family, right? You
Uh-huh.
have to show up. There's a role that you kind of fit into, that
Yeah.
people think that this is your part
Yeah.
that you play.
Yeah.
But I said no to a lot of things,
Mm.
not caring that, for instance, some family members wanted me to go and spend some time and do this. And I'm like, I don't want to go. Like, number one, I don't want to be there. Number two,
Mm.
I don't want to be with the country. It didn't help my driving or my state. Um, I happened to choose, not that I chose, but I happened to go to El Salvador during a red alert. They
Oh,
had torrential rain and mudslides.
oh gosh.
So certainly I didn't want to be on the highway that had had a
Right.
mudslide the day before.
Right.
So,
Right.
but so saying no was very big.
Hmm.
Um,
Was
and
it scary?
eh, it wasn't scary at first. It was sort of like I knew I needed to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I just need to. And I wanted, it was so easy to fall into the automatic pilot,
Right.
and to go back into the patterns. And I said,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that. And,
Yeah.
and that, there was so much peace. And yet there was a part of me that said, well, what if it would have been fun? What if?
Hmm.
But I the what if wasn't enough to say it's a good price to pay for my health and my well-being and
Hmm.
my
Mm.
mental stableness, right?
Yeah.
But that's a lot of the testament to the work that continues to happen. I'm nowhere near where anybody gets to a point in which they're fixed, right? We continue to evolve. So that certainly has been my path. And
Yeah.
I wonder if other women that are listening to us can kind of see where they go into that autopilot, as opposed to
Right.
allowing themselves to set up a boundary, say no, or really take just a step back to even
Hmm.
observe.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's great that what you did, and I would agree. And there's that fear of missing out, right? That
Hmm.
FOMO
Yeah,
that can
of
come up
course.
as well, even if, and you're sort of like, oh, they're having the party, but the hammock, I think I just need to be in the hammock, and just stare at the
Yeah,
sky. But there's the party and they're going to have so much fun. I'll be going to miss out. And
yeah.
it can be hard sometimes to make that decision about which,
Hmm.
but I really think going as deep in yourself as you can and making that decision, and then just really feeling good about your decision and just
Yeah,
knowing that that is the best for you right now. It's beautiful.
yeah.
And that makes us so much stronger.
Yeah. So how do people, specifically, that are maybe struggling with putting boundaries, and maybe some of these lack of boundaries are really affecting them in their physical health? And talk to me a little bit about chronic fatigue, long COVID, because we're seeing a lot of that. So I'd love
Mhm.
for you to kind of deep dive into that.
Sure. So in terms of long COVID and chronic fatigue, the way that what I have come to see is that there are five general root causes that can be in somebody who's dealing with ongoing fatigue. I see a lot of people who are tired and don't realize that they have, it's actually called myalgic encephalitis now,
Hmm.
myalgic encephalitis or chronic fatigue syndrome, or even long COVID. They don't realize
Hmm.
that's what's going on because they keep pushing themselves through this fatigue. And what I see are that there are five significant root causes, and you may have one, two, three, or all five of them. One of them is this, what I call the gateway root cause, which is a hormone triangle, which is your adrenal gland or hypothalamic pituitary axis, your stress
Hmm.
response, and your thyroid, and then your hormones. And that triangle needs to work beautifully together as a symphony for you to have the energy you need to
Hmm.
function throughout your day. So if you've been on the stress express, pushing that cortisol, high cortisol level, like many of
Mm.
us do when we're successful women, that it
Yeah.
can become a real gateway to leading to other root causes of chronic fatigue, and can be part of a really deep
Hmm.
crash. and make you vulnerable to reactivating chronic viruses, which is another one of the root causes. The other thing that really happens with a lot of people is we have so many toxins in our environment right now
Mhm.
that those can deeply impact our ability to generate energy in our cells. And we don't even realize that that's what it is. It can be from mercury fillings, like it was for me,
Mhm.
or from lead, from the gas that we breathed in the air if you were born before 1979. There can be so many reasons why your body is not functioning. And then one of the other root causes is this limbic emotional dysfunction, which we've been touching on here.
Mhm.
When that emotional brain gets triggered and fired, it can really put on a protective response and make you feel more tired, more in pain, because it's trying to get you to go back into your cave where it's safe.
Mhm.
So it's really the key is to uncover what's going on for you, is to be honest. If you're struggling with your energy, I encourage you to get support so that you can have more energy. I mean, the truth is that we all want to be amazing
Yeah.
parents and amazing in our profession. We all have gifts to give in the world. I mean, if it's gardening, that's your gift. Like there's a
Mhm.
gift that we all have to be in the world. And if you're exhausted, you can't be your best. And so that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want us all to be able to thrive and to be our best right now, because I believe the world needs us to be
Mhm.
our best at this time. And it feels better
It
to be
does
doing your
feel better.
passion,
It does feel better. Now, there's a
Yeah.
big correlation between health and what we put into our bodies. And you alluded to
Yes.
toxins in the environment.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about food because I do believe that food is medicine.
Food is
Um,
huge.
and what are some of these foundational things that we should do when it comes
Yeah.
to our food so that we can begin to also help our system heal from the inside?
Yeah. So there are 5 health foundations that are key to all of us thriving all the time. And these 5 health foundations, if you're feeling sick or tired or dealing with autoimmune conditions, whatever you have health
Mhm.
wise, getting these 5 core foundations dialed in is going to help your treatment. And for high performers, this is exactly what high performers focus on, are these five health foundations, and these are central. So the first one is digestion detoxification, and that includes diet. So eating the foods that are good for your body, that don't
Mhm.
trigger inflammatory response. A lot of us eat foods that we're actually sensitive to and can flare up our bodies and cause problems.
Mhm.
And you really need to be eating nutrition that's good for you. I don't think there's a perfect diet for everyone throughout their life. I think at
Mhm.
different points of our life, we need different foods. I know what I needed when I was pregnant is different than what my body needs now that I'm postmenopausal. And I think that that just makes sense. I think cultural
Mhm.
beliefs do play a part in terms of what you should or shouldn't eat.
Yeah.
That said, I think that we can really all agree that we want to eat healthy protein, protein that's clean. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, that's a lot of really good legumes and nuts and seeds. If you're a meat eater, it's the best grass-fed organic meat that you can afford. You want to be eating lots of plants, lots of vegetables,
Mhm.
lots of healthy fruits. These things generally are good for us. There are some people that, can't do certain histamines or lectins or those
Mhm.
kinds of things. Those are kind of subgroups. But in general, just knowing that putting food in your body
Yeah.
is loving yourself.
Mhm.
And it may feel like the Oreo cookie or the or the hot fudge sundae is a form of love. And I've been there too with emotional
Mhm.
eating. And really, truly, the real love is knowing that this food is gonna digest
Yeah.
well, it's gonna create energy in your body and help your skin and your hair and everything be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually came home and our first meal home last night, I had this delicious salmon that was grilled and
Mm, yeah,
some veggies. And I just felt so good
right.
because I do know that there's foods that trigger and are not helpful. Right.
Yeah.
And for many of us, we're not really aware. Now, sleep also, if even though we may be dealing with something like chronic fatigue, sleep is something that people think, well, I shouldn't be sleeping so much. But
Mm,
sleep is very crucial to our
mhm,
wellness. Can you touch a
mhm.
little bit on that?
Sleep is essential. And when I talk about that first root cause of that adrenal hypothalamic pituitary
Mhm.
axis being thrown off, which a lot of us get to when we're stressed out, one of the number one ways you can get that back rebalanced is by
Mhm.
regulating your sleep and resetting your daily rhythm. So,
Mhm.
going to bed at about the same time every night, getting up at the same time every morning. If you need to take a nap, have that nap be about the same time every day, not so late that it disturbs your evening bedtime.
Right.
And also, if you can eat if you're exercising, exercise at the same time every day, that resetting of the circadian rhythm is so helpful. For
Mhm.
those of you who are moms, you remember when your baby was first born and it didn't know the difference between night and day? It didn't have that circadian rhythm set up yet. You had to be the parent to help say, okay, this is bedtime. We're doing book, bath, and bed. Okay, it's
Mhm.
morning time. We need to sometimes retrain our bodies. So if your sleep is
Mhm.
dysregulated, you may need to reparent yourself. Be that parent that puts yourself to bed at a really good hour, having a ritual so that your brain starts to trigger, oh, it's bedtime, just like we do for our babies,
Mhm.
like, bath,
Yeah.
book, bed. What's your bath book bed that's going to help you reset your
Mm,
rhythm so that
so
you can
good.
get your sleep? I know it is so good.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And I'm like, "Oh, check, check. I did that. I did that." So I'm feeling good.
Good job. Well done.
One of the things that people often hear me talk about is my evening tea ritual, but it really
Mhm,
is something that helps to regulate me.
mhm.
I turn on the kettle at night, even when it's summertime, and I know that this is my wind down time.
Yes.
Um, Individuals that seek medical help
Mhm,
for a lot of these conditions that we're talking about
mhm.
sometimes are misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed. What, how do people know that they've been over, under, or misdiagnosed?
If you're not getting better.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
simple,
yeah.
but that's so good. That's such a good answer.
I mean, if you're not getting better and there isn't a good explanation for that, you don't
Hmm.
feel like you're getting the answers, you know if you're being heard, you know your body better than any practitioner is going to know your body. Any
Hmm.
practitioner should be a guide to support you in your process, you know. So if you're showing up at your practitioner and you don't leave feeling better. Obviously, things may not be healed in that one visit, but you should have felt like, oh, I was met. I was listened to. I know that I trust that this plan is good, or that the questions that we're investigating together are the right ones.
Hmm.
You know inside of you if you're getting the attention you need. And it's just important to, we talk about boundaries, and it's okay to try somebody else if what who you're working with isn't working.
Hmm.
I always give this talk to my patients who are looking for a therapist, and I feel the same way about me. Like, I only
Hmm.
want to work with people who I know are a good match to work with me, and
Hmm.
those are the people that I bring on to work with me, and I only want people to work with me that feel like I'm the good match for them. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got to be this two-way thing
Oh,
where we're both
100%.
saying, yes, this is what we're doing together, you know?
Yeah. 100%. I know that there's a lot of conventional medicine that treats um, individuals going through this diagnosis in a very different way than you would treat them. What are some of the differences? Can you give me a little comparison?
Sure. Unfortunately, in conventional medicine, the myalgic encephalitis, chronic fatigue has for decades been really pushed aside. People have been dismissed, told you're aging, you're tired because you're a mom, or you're just older, even though you're just 40 years
Mhm.
old, I mean, all this crazy stuff. And it's been pushed aside, or people have thought it's a psychological issue and then given antidepressants. And now that long COVID has happened, there's been more attention of seeing how valid it is, which has been great. Unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot of the conventional practices. Usually what people they may get some pacing, some breath work, some different stimulants or things like that that can be benefit to some people, but I don't really see them addressing the root causes. And that's the part that I see as the problem, because the conventional medical model is based on you need to have a test that proves that you have it, and then you need to have a
Mhm.
medication that proves that we can then have a test that follows up to say
Right.
that this drug is curing it. And
Mhm.
we don't have that yet for this condition, because the condition's not caused by one thing, it's caused by
Right.
multiple of things. And
Mhm.
the multiples can be different in a different person. If you and I both had myalgic encephalitis or long COVID, we could have different root causes and
Right.
different health foundations that we need to address to get well. And so it really needs to be personalized and individualized. And the conventional medical model is not set up that way. It's set up on in a different system. And it just doesn't work, unfortunately, very well for these chronic conditions.
Mhm.
I'm hoping to help change that in the world. And right now, what I find works best is when we can talk with you, you can begin to understand what are your potential root causes. Which of the 5 health foundations do you need to focus on first? Choose one
Mhm.
and focus on that one, and then focus on the next one. That's going to help increase your base level of health. And then, of the 5 root causes, which ones are the ones that are sucking your energy dry, and start addressing them. And when it comes to treatment, I have this incredibly deep and wide toolbox because I've been doing this for decades.
Mhm.
And what I've experienced in clinic is that not everybody needs or responds to the same treatment. Some people
Mhm.
need pharmaceuticals, some need energy medicine, and it just depends
Yeah.
in terms of what your body resonates to. Some people really like herbal medicine or essential oils or supplements. Other people, that doesn't help at all. And so I had this one patient who we couldn't do any herbs or supplements with her. She only pharmaceuticals and homeopathy were the only thing that helped her. And of other people that you can do anything with. And some are so sensitive that you just have to do the
Mhm.
microdose of the energetic medicine for them to shift. But truly, the body has the ability to heal. And I think this is the other thing that's very different
Mhm.
in terms of how I practice is that I come from a physics and vitalistic model of medicine where I know that the body has the ability to heal and to come back into balance once it's given the right information and once the barriers to healing are removed.
Mhm.
And this is a different model than, oh, we have to go in and stop or take away this
Right.
thing. We need to
Right.
support this, which is why our whole conversation about loving yourself and
Yeah.
taking time and boundaries is so important because
Mhm.
that's part of it. That's part of the picture. When we talk about this physical, the mental, emotional, and the energetic, like which level for you is the dis-ease happening in it? Maybe all 3, like it was for me when I was
Mhm.
flat in bed, or it may be just 1 or 2. So figuring those things out. And again, this is not a conversation that is in the conventional model at this time.
Right. Right.
My
Yeah.
vision for the best medicine is that we encompass all the medicine. I think the conventional model is amazing for emergency medicine and for surgeries and things like that. I love it for that. We want that reductionistic model there. I
Mhm.
wish that we had a system where we could triage for those that have the chronic stuff, the autoimmune conditions, the things that don't fit into nice little neat, tidy boxes of diagnosis, that those could be triaged to the people who do the kind of medicine that I do.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about so many different components that really resonate with me, and I hope that the listeners are paying attention because there is not a one size fits all. And I think that there are a lot of times
Yeah.
with conventional medicine we think, okay, this is the symptom, let's just give it this pill and then things go away. But there are so many different layers that we need to unpack. What does it look like for someone to maybe leverage some of your expertise? What is that? What does that look like? Because I know that, there's a lot of questions that people may have.
Mhm.
Maybe they're not familiar with the type of practice that you have, functional
Mhm.
medicine, and this is all new to them. So
Mhm.
walk me through that.
So if somebody comes to work with me, right now I'm bringing people on for 6 month or 1 year commitments where we work together. And the process is really, I mean, the first process is really just a phone call to be sure
Mhm.
we're a good match. Because like I said, I only
Yeah.
bring in people that I feel like I truly believe I can help and who I also truly believe are ready to do this work. And so there's a conversation that needs to happen for us to see
Hmm.
if we're a good fit for each other. If we both agree that that is a good fit, then the next step is it's if we talk about if we say, okay, we're going to do 6 months or a year, the first few months are really uncovering what is it that are those root causes? Which health foundations do you need to address?
Hmm.
And some of that is lab testing, some of it is doing some history, some of it is seeing what you've done before that hasn't worked or has worked. This is all information for us to be able to really dial in what is it that's going on with you? Where do we need to put our energy and our focus to be able to shift? Then the second piece is really beginning to try stuff out. And it is an
Hmm.
experiment because we want to see what happens to your body when you take this or try this. How do you feel? And then you're giving me feedback so that I can then do a deeper dive and guide you even closer to what it is that we really need to do. I call this the calibration piece. So we have the
Hmm.
decode piece where we're uncovering what's going on, then calibration where we're seeing what works for you. The third step of 5 steps, the third step is what I call your personalized toolkit. And this is where you have the confidence, because now you understand what works for your body. Like, you know which foods work better for your body. So
Mhm.
you know that you can re-regulate yourself coming home and have that salmon and vegetable meal. What are the
Mhm.
supplements that help you in that next process? And then some people just like to coast there and stay in this place because they feel their energy is better and they feel happy. But those who are ready and willing, the fourth phase is amazing, where you get to do a deeper dive into deeper
Mhm.
detoxification, deeper
Uh,
subconscious work. What is it that you really need? Like, what's that thing under the thing under the thing that's been
mhm.
sucking you down for decades, you know?
Mhm.
And it's like you clean the house, but now you're cleaning the closet. And then the fifth layer is this beautiful state where I see people really recreating themselves. And because now, when you've been dealing with chronic illness and when your body starts to shift, you shift and you become another version of yourself. And that is a beautiful place where I've seen people find new careers and relationships and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's really pretty. It's really, really fun to watch blossom in that way.
That's really, really fun to actually go through, I think, even though that it might be scary for people when they think change, digging into things that they're
Yeah.
maybe like, oh, I don't know about that. But I can tell you that it's worth the work, and you are worth the work. You are
Yeah.
worth the
Yeah.
investment. And
Yeah.
it's so needed for us to start looking at how we leverage medicine in a different world, because I think that we've been very reactive when it comes to healing,
Yeah.
as opposed to proactive. Um, Tell me, how do people contact you? What is the best way to find you? Where do you hang out online?
The best thing to find is to go to my website, drjennytafankian.com. On there is information about programs. Also, I have a quiz if you're interested in getting a look at root causes. There's a quiz on there that I've created where I follow the same thinking
Mhm.
process I use in clinic, and that can be really fun. I have free resources, and if you're interested, you can just book a call and we can chat and see if we're a good match for each other.
Amazing. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, is there something that I didn't ask you that maybe we should have talked about?
I love that question. I actually have two things. One, I just want to say, when you talked about it, maybe fear, people may be fearing the change. There's a part of us that prefers to be in the box that we know, that may be uncomfortable. And even though we may be unhappy or not feel well, than to be in the part that is new and unknown. And I would just encourage you, in whatever part of your life you're aware of that isn't comfortable, whether it's relationship or jobs or your health, that it is worth it to break out of that pattern of discomfort to experience this new thing. And I just want to give that to you, to say it is worth it, even though part of our
Mm,
psyche wants to stay in the uncomfortable known instead of branching out. It's worth it. So I just want to leave you with that. And the second thing is that I just feel remiss without saying this to you. If you have a minute, with your brain and you having a hard time driving, that can maybe a key of something. Would you like to hear what that is?
yeah, absolutely. I am
Okay.
here to learn just as the listeners are. So please.
Right. So there's a lot of with people with chronic illness, autoimmune conditions, myalgic encephalitis, long COVID, dementias. There's a lot of brain inflammation going on. If you have brain fog, you have brain inflammation. And if you've had traumatic brain injuries or infections or toxins, all of that can cause brain inflammation, which is a chronic process. When your brain is inflamed, it can alter the communication between your eyes and your brain.
Mm,
And this, one of the signs of that is stressed out driving. I had the same thing. I got COVID and it kicked up my chronic fatigue, and I got long COVID. And my son said, "You're driving like a preschool teacher." And he was right. I was like triple checking over my shoulder. And all of a sudden I was feeling stressed out driving and I felt anxious, and that wasn't like me. And I
mhm.
realized what it was is that my eyes and my brain were not tracking together, and it was creating a lot of stress and triggering that limbic brain, so I didn't feel safe. And
Ooh,
and there's an answer. So there's a couple different things that you can do, and one of the ones I think is most helpful is to actually see an neurological optometrist.
okay.
And they're not all the same. They don't all have the same experience. I'm friends with a guy named with a company called ScreenFit, and I know he has some online programs where he's been doing some stuff. I actually
Cool.
went to a local place and worked with a optometrist who gave me these colored lenses and prism glasses, and my brain and eyes have corrected, and I don't have that experience now. I drive confidently now with
Oh,
energy. So yeah, I really highly recommend. It's great for TBIs, for brain inflammation, for fatigue, for stress when you're driving. So that's just kind of like
well, I
just a
love
word
that.
out
I
there for
love that
everybody.
because I've been looking for answers. I
There you go.
talked about it with with my functional medicine doctor. I actually have an appointment with her next month, but I knew that there was something more
Yeah,
coming up, and I
yeah,
am in that fight or flight mode
yes,
as I'm driving. And
yes,
it's not like me. I've driven all over the world. I've taken
yeah,
many long trips. So
yeah,
yeah, I want to get back to driving. Driving has always been something that's been really helpful
yeah, yeah,
and fun for me. So that's a great recommendation.
yeah.
Um, Thank you so much for your generosity of time and your generosity of knowledge. I want to encourage the listeners that if there's something here that you heard today that really resonated with you, again, knowledge is great, but implementation is better. Make sure that you go and implement and integrate this into your life, and go and find Dr. Jenny on all the social media platforms. We'll have her information on the show notes, but go and tell her what is the one thing that really resonated with you and that you're integrating into your life. That is the key to confidence. So thank you again for your time. And my friends, don't forget, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.